She saw the manager raise his hand to strike the shy new girl. Without thinking, the waitress stepped between them, blocking the blow meant for someone she barely knew. What she didn't know, the girl's father watching from the corner booth was a vampire king, and he hadn't forgotten what she did. The rain hammered against the windows of Betty's diner like 1,000 angry fists. Ivy Martinez wiped down the counter for the third time that hour, her feet screaming in protest after a double shift. The clock above the cash register read 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until freedom. Order up. Stan, the night cook, rang the bell. Ivy grabbed the plates, 2 burgers, 1 with extra pickles, and headed toward booth 7. That's when she heard the crash. The sound of shattering glass echoed from the kitchen entrance. Ivy spun around to see a young girl standing frozen, a tray of broken dishes at her feet, chocolate milkshakes spreading across the black and white tiles like a crime scene. "I'm so sorry," the girl whispered, her voice barely audible. She couldn't have been more than 17, with pale skin and dark hair that fell across her face like a curtain. New girl. Started just 3 days ago. Serafina, if Ivy remembered correctly. "It's fine, sweetie. Accidents happen," Ivy began, setting down her plates. Accidents. The office door slammed open. Marcus, the night manager, stormed out, his face purple with rage. "That's the second dish you've broken this week." Serafina's hands trembled as she knelt to pick up the pieces. "I'll pay for them. Please, You'll pay?" Marcus laughed, a cruel sound that made Ivy's stomach turn. "With what? The pathetic tips you've been pulling? You're worthless. Just like I told the owner when he hired you." The diner had gone quiet. The handful of late-night customers watched the scene unfold with the uncomfortable fascination of people who didn't want to get involved. All except one. In the corner booth, shrouded in shadows despite the fluorescent lights, sat a man Ivy hadn't noticed before. He was impossibly still, hands folded on the table, watching Marcus with eyes that seemed to catch the light wrong, like a cat's reflection in the dark. "Get up," Marcus snarled at Serafina. When she didn't move fast enough, he reached down and grabbed her arm, yanking her to her feet. "You're done. Take your hands off her." Ivy's voice cut through the diner like a knife. She didn't remember moving, but suddenly she was there, her hand wrapped around Marcus's wrist, pulling his grip away from the trembling girl. Marcus whirled on her, his breath hot and sour. "Stay out of this, Martinez. Unless you want to join her in the unemployment line." "She's a kid who made a mistake," Ivy said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Back off." "A kid?" Marcus's lip curled. "She's a freak who can barely look people in the eye. I should never have." He raised his hand. Not to point, not to gesture.
To strike.
Ivy didn't think. She stepped between Marcus and Serafina, her arm coming up to block the blow that was meant for the girl's face. The slap connected with Ivy's forearm instead, the sound sharp and final. The diner erupted. Stan shouted from the kitchen. 2 customers stood up. But Ivy barely heard them. She was staring at Marcus, at the shock in his eyes that someone had finally stood up to him. "You're fired," he hissed. "Both of you. Get out.
Now."
"Good," Ivy said, her arm throbbing. She turned to Serafina, whose eyes were wide with disbelief. "Come on, honey. Let's go." As they walked toward the door, Ivy glanced at the corner booth. The strange man was standing now, and in the better light, she could see him clearly. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit that looked expensive, too expensive for a roadside diner at midnight. His face was angular, aristocratic, with sharp cheekbones and eyes, so pale they were almost silver. But it was the way he looked at Serafina that made Ivy pause. Not with curiosity or pity. With recognition. And something deeper. Relief. "Thank you," Serafina whispered as they stepped into the rain. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Ivy dug in her apron for her car keys, trying to ignore the fact that she'd just thrown away her only source of income. "Nobody deserves to be treated like that. You okay?" Serafina nodded, but her eyes drifted back toward the diner window. Following her gaze, Ivy saw the man from the corner booth still standing there, watching them through the rain-streaked glass. "Do you know him?" Ivy asked. Serafina's expression was unreadable, in a way. Before Ivy could ask what that meant, the girl had pulled up her hood and disappeared into the storm, moving with a speed and grace that seemed impossible in the downpour. Ivy stood alone in the parking lot, rain soaking through her uniform, wondering what she'd just stepped into. Behind her, inside the diner, Damien Vallon remained perfectly still. He'd come to check on his daughter as he did every night, watching from the shadows to ensure she was safe in the human world she so desperately wanted to understand. He'd expected boredom. Another quiet shift of Serafina awkwardly navigating mortal customs. Instead, he'd witnessed something he hadn't seen in 3 centuries: pure, selfless courage. The waitress, Ivy, her name tag had read, had defended his daughter without hesitation, had stepped between her and harm despite having nothing to gain and everything to lose. Damien's fingers tightened on the edge of the table, leaving impressions in the wood that would puzzle Marcus for weeks. Loyalty like that was rare, precious. And in his world, it deserved to be rewarded. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Graves, I need you to arrange something. By morning." As he walked out into the rain, Damien allowed himself the ghost of a smile. The waitress had saved his daughter. Now he would change her life forever. Ivy's phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m., jarring her from a restless sleep. She'd spent half the night staring at her bank account, doing mental math that never came out in her favor. Rent was due in 5 days. Her car payment in 7. And now she had no job. The text was from Marcus. "Don't bother coming back for your last check. Consider it payment for the dishes." "Bastard," Ivy muttered, throwing her phone across her tiny apartment. It bounced off the couch and clattered to the floor. She needed coffee. She needed a miracle. What she got was a knock at her door. Ivy peered through the peephole, expecting her landlord coming early to hassle her about rent. Instead, she saw a man in a crisp black suit, standing with military posture, holding a large envelope. She cracked the door open, chain still attached. "Can I help you, Miss Ivy Martinez?" His voice was formal, British accent polished. "My name is Graves. I represent the Vallon household. May I have a moment of your time?" The who. "It would be better if we spoke inside, miss." Every instinct told Ivy to slam the door. Strange men showing up at dawn with mysterious envelopes. That was horror movie territory. But something about his demeanor, professional, almost ancient in its courtesy, made her hesitate. "I'll stay right here, thanks." "What's this about?" Graves didn't seem offended. He simply opened the envelope and pulled out a letter written on heavy cream paper with actual wax seal. "My employer witnessed your actions last evening at the diner. He was impressed by your character and wishes to offer you a position." Ivy laughed. She couldn't help it. "A position? I'm a waitress who just got fired. What kind of position could?" "Private household staff," Graves interrupted smoothly. "The Vallon estate requires someone with your particular qualities. Compassion, courage, discretion." He paused. "The salary is $80,000 annually, with full lodging, meals, and benefits included." The words hit Ivy like a bucket of ice water.
80.
"That's not real." "I assure you, it is quite real." Graves extended the letter. "Mr. Vallon is a very particular man. He values loyalty above all else. What you did for the young woman last night, that cannot be taught. It can only be recognized and rewarded." Ivy's hand trembled as she took the letter. The paper felt expensive, heavy. The handwriting was old-fashioned, elegant. "Miss Martinez, courage is the rarest currency in this world. You spent yours freely on behalf of someone you barely knew. Allow me to offer you an opportunity worthy of such character. The position is yours if you wish it. Mr. Graves will answer any questions. Respectfully, Damien Vallon." "This is insane," Ivy whispered. I don't know anything about your employer. I don't know. The young woman you defended is Mr. Vallen's daughter, Graves said quietly. Serafina. She struggles in social situations. Most people ignore her, or worse. You protected her. For that alone, Mr. Vallen wishes to ensure you're taken care of. Something in Ivy's chest twisted. Serafina. Those frightened eyes. That whispered thank you. What would I be doing exactly? General household management. The estate is large but not ostentatious. You would coordinate staff, ensure the household runs smoothly, and serve as a companion to Miss Serafina when she's home. She's taken quite a liking to you. I can't just leave my life. Graves glanced around her cramped apartment, the stack of overdue bills on the counter, the leak-stained ceiling, the flickering light that never quite worked. His expression remained neutral, but Ivy felt the judgment anyway. The car is waiting downstairs, he said gently. If you wish to see the estate before deciding, I can have you back within 2 hours.
No obligación.
Ivy looked at her phone on the floor, at Marcus's text still glowing on the cracked screen. She thought about the diner, about men like him everywhere, about barely scraping by while people with power crushed anyone beneath them. She thought about Serafina's frightened face and the strange man in the corner booth who'd watched it all with those unsettling silver eyes. 2 hours, Ivy said. Then I want to come back and think about it. Of course, miss. 20 minutes later, Ivy sat in the back of a black Mercedes, watching the city fade away. They drove for nearly an hour, leaving behind strip malls and suburbs, entering countryside she didn't know existed this close to town. Then she saw it. Vallen Manor rose from the morning mist like something from a gothic novel. Iron gates opened automatically, revealing a winding drive through manicured gardens. The house itself was massive, 3 stories of dark stone and towering windows, surrounded by ancient oaks that seemed to lean in protectively. Holy hell, Ivy breathed. Indeed, Graves said, the faintest smile touching his lips. Welcome to Vallen Manor, Miss Martinez. As they pulled up to the entrance, Ivy saw him. The man from the diner, standing at the top of the stone steps, hands clasped behind his back.
Damien Vallen.
Even in daylight, or what little filtered through the clouds, he seemed to absorb the shadows around him. When their eyes met, Ivy felt something click into place, like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed. He descended the steps with fluid grace. Miss Martinez. Thank you for coming. His voice was deep, cultured, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Old-world European, maybe. His eyes were even stranger up close, pale gray touched with something that might have been silver or might have been her imagination. Ivy's carefully prepared questions died on her lips. Why me? Damien's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those strange eyes. My daughter spoke highly of you. I reward loyalty, Miss Martinez. It's a rare quality. Before Ivy could respond, a figure appeared in the doorway behind him. Serafina, looking less frightened than she had at the diner, offered a small, genuine smile. Please stay, the girl said softly. It would mean everything. And standing there, looking at this impossible house and its impossible inhabitants, Ivy made a decision that would alter the course of her existence forever. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. Damien's smile was slight, but unmistakable. Excellent. Welcome home, Miss Martinez. The first 3 days at Vallen Manor passed in a strange, dreamlike blur. Ivy's quarters were larger than her entire apartment, a suite with a 4-poster bed, a private bathroom with a clawfoot tub, and windows overlooking gardens that seemed to glow silver in the moonlight. Her duties were surprisingly light. Coordinate meal schedules, oversee the small staff, and spend time with Serafina. But something was wrong. It started with small things. The housekeeping staff, all 3 of them, only worked after sunset. The cook, a silent woman named Helena, prepared elaborate dinners that Damien barely touched, pushing food around his plate with distant politeness. And the mirrors. Every single mirror in the manor was covered with dark cloth. Old family tradition, Graves had explained when Ivy asked. Mr. Vallon finds them distasteful. Then there were the sounds. Footsteps in empty hallways at 3 a.m. Whispers in languages Ivy didn't recognize. Once, she could have sworn she heard wings beating against her window, though nothing was there when she looked. You're imagining things, she told herself on the fourth night, polishing silver in the dining room. Rich people are just weird. Are we? Ivy jumped, nearly dropping the candlestick. Damien stood in the doorway, though she hadn't heard him approach. He never seemed to make sound when he moved. Mr. Vallon, I didn't hear you come in. You seemed deep in thought. He moved closer, his steps silent on the hardwood. Are you settling in comfortably? Yes, thank you. Everyone's been very welcoming. But you have questions. It wasn't a question itself. Those pale eyes studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Ivy set down the silver. Why don't you eat? The food Helena makes is incredible, but you barely touch it. I have particular dietary requirements. Why do the staff only work at night? They prefer it. As do I. Why are all the mirrors covered? Damien's expression flickered, something between amusement and warning. You're very observant, Miss Martinez. It's Ivy. And you're very evasive, Mr. Vallon. For a long moment, he simply watched her. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. It transformed his face, making him look less like a marble statue and more like something dangerous and alive. I appreciate directness, he said. It's refreshing. Before Ivy could respond, a crash echoed from upstairs. Seraphina's voice called out, pained and frightened. Damien moved. 1 second he was across the room, the next he was at the door, a blur of motion that defied physics. Ivy's brain stuttered, trying to process what she'd just seen. She raced after him, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Damien was already in Seraphina's room, kneeling beside his daughter, who sat on the floor surrounded by broken glass from a fallen picture frame. I'm fine, Seraphina said quickly. I just knocked it over. I'm so clumsy. Let me see. Ivy knelt beside them, gently taking Seraphina's hand. A thin line of blood welled from her palm where glass had cut her. The effect was instant and terrifying. Damien went rigid. His eyes, those strange pale eyes, suddenly burned crimson, bright as brake lights in the dark. His lips parted, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too long. The air around him seemed to thicken with an ancient, predatory hunger. Then he was across the room, his back to them, hands braced against the wall. His shoulders heaved with effort. Father? Seraphina's voice was small. I'm fine, his voice was strained, barely controlled.
Graves.
Take Seraphina to the kitchen.
Now.
Graves appeared in the doorway, as if summoned by thought alone. He took Seraphina gently by the arm, leading her out. The girl looked back at Ivy with eyes full of apology and fear. Ivy stood frozen, her mind racing. The red eyes, the teeth, the impossible speed, the way he'd reacted to blood like.
No.
That was impossible. You should go, Damien said, still facing the wall. His voice was rough, barely human. What are you? The words escaped before Ivy could stop them. He laughed, a broken, bitter sound. You should go, Miss Martinez. Before you learn things you cannot unlearn. Ivy looked at the doorway, at the easy escape. Every rational part of her brain screamed to run, to leave this house and never look back. Instead, she walked to the vanity and grabbed a tissue, wrapping it around Seraphina's blood on her palm. When she turned, she saw it, Damien's reflection in the glass picture frame on the dresser. Except there was no reflection. The frame showed the room behind him, the furniture, the walls. But where Damien stood, there was only empty air. Oh my God, Ivy whispered. Damien finally turned to face her. His eyes had faded back to pale gray, but his expression was raw with something that looked like shame. Now you see, he said quietly. Now you understand why I hide the mirrors. Why we live in shadows. He took a step toward her, moving with careful deliberation. I am not what you think I am, Ivy Martinez. I am something older. Something that should not exist in your world of sunlight and certainty. Ivy's back hit the wall. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Vampires, she breathed. Vampires are real. Yes. And Serafina is my daughter. Half human, half something else. A bridge between worlds that makes her a target for those who fear change. His voice dropped. You saved her life that night in the diner. Not from Marcus's hand, but from being seen. From being noticed by those who hunt us. Ivy slid down the wall, her legs giving out. Everything she thought she knew about the world had just shattered like the glass on the floor. Damien knelt before her, carefully maintaining distance. I apologize. I should have told you before bringing you here. But Serafina needed someone kind. Someone brave. Someone who saw her as human first. His eyes met hers. I needed someone who could do what I cannot. Give her hope that both her worlds can coexist. Ivy's voice shook. I need air. I need to think. Of course, Damien stood, offering his hand. When she didn't take it, he stepped back. The East Garden is peaceful at night. Take all the time you need. As Ivy stumbled toward the door, his voice stopped her. For what it's worth, you are never in danger. Not from me. A father who cannot die learns to control his nature, if only to protect those he loves. Ivy looked back at him, this impossible creature who wore a man's face and spoke with a father's love. What happens now? She asked. Damien's smile was sad. Now, you decide if you can accept the truth, or if you'll run from it. The question hung in the air like smoke as Ivy fled into the night. Ivy didn't run. For 3 days, she avoided Damien, speaking only to Serafina and Graves. She researched vampires on her phone, folklore, fiction, legend, trying to separate truth from fantasy. But every time she considered leaving, she'd see Serafina's hopeful face at breakfast, hear her shy laughter when they played chess in the library. The girl was innocent. Whatever her father was, she deserved kindness. On the 4th night, the storm came. Thunder shook the manor's foundations. Rain lashed the windows like gravel. Ivy was helping Serafina study biology. The irony wasn't lost on her when the lights flickered and died. Generator will kick in, Serafina said, but her voice trembled. It didn't. In the darkness, Ivy heard something that made her blood freeze, the sound of breaking glass from the ground floor. Then voices. Hard, cold, human voices. Spread out. The half-breed should be upstairs. Footsteps. Heavy boots on marble. Serafina, get away from the window, Ivy whispered urgently. They found us. Serafina's eyes were wide with terror. Father said they'd come eventually. The hunters. Who? The door exploded inward. 3 figures in tactical gear stormed in, crossbows raised. Silver bolts gleamed in the lightning's flash. One man wore a leather coat marked with symbols that hurt to look at, crosses and sigils that seemed to writhe in the darkness. There, the leader said, aiming at Serafina. Solomon's daughter. The abomination. Ivy didn't think. She grabbed Serafina and shoved her toward the reading nook, putting herself between the girl and the weapons. Don't you dare touch her. The leader laughed. A human shield? How predictable. Move, woman, or you'll die with the creature. She's a child, you psychopath.
She's a mistake.
An insult to nature itself. He raised the crossbow. Last chance. Ivy spread her arms wider. Behind her, she felt Serafina trembling.
No.
The bolt flew. Ivy braced for impact, for pain, but it never came. A shadow dropped from the ceiling, impossibly fast, catching the bolt mid-flight with bare hands. Damien. He crushed the silver bolt like chalk, his eyes burning crimson in the darkness. When he spoke, his voice was death itself. You dare enter my home. Threaten my child. He moved, and 2 hunters collapsed with broken necks before Ivy could blink. You dare. The leader fired 3 bolts in rapid succession. Damien dodged two and caught the third, hurling it back with such force it pinned the man's shoulder to the wall. More hunters poured through the door. 6.
8.
A dozen. They filled the hallway with silver weapons and holy water, chanting prayers that made the air crackle with hostile energy. Ivy. Graves appeared at the reading nook window. The cellar.
Now.
Ivy didn't hesitate. She grabbed Seraphina and ran, following Graves down a servant staircase as chaos erupted above. The sounds were horrific. Screams, crashes, the wet sounds of violence that would haunt her dreams. The cellar was ancient, all stone and darkness. Graves barred the door with iron bolts. Stay here. Don't open this for anyone but me or Mr. Vallon. What about? He's fought worse. Graves' expression was grim. But protect Miss Seraphina. That's what matters. He was gone before Ivy could argue. In the darkness, Seraphina wept quietly. Ivy held her, this girl who was supposedly half monster, feeling her very human tears soak through her shirt. Why do they hate me? Seraphina whispered. I never hurt anyone. Because people fear what they don't understand, Ivy said. And fear makes monsters of us all. Above them, the battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably minutes. Then silence. Terrible, complete silence. Footsteps approached the cellar door.
Slow.
Deliberate. Seraphina, Damien's voice, strained but alive. It's over. Ivy unbolted the door. Damien stood there, covered in blood. None of it his own. His elegant suit was shredded. His eyes had faded back to gray, but they held an exhaustion that spoke of centuries. Behind him, the manor was a war zone. Bodies lay scattered, hunters in their tactical gear, their holy symbols worthless against an ancient king defending his daughter. Are you hurt? He asked, eyes scanning them both. No, Ivy said. We're fine.
But you.
I heal. He looked past her to Seraphina, his expression softening. Are you all right, little one? Seraphina nodded, then ran to him, burying her face in his chest despite the blood. He held her carefully, as if she were made of glass. Ivy stood in the doorway, watching this monster comfort his child with a tenderness that broke her heart. I need to understand, she said. All of it. What you are. What she is. Why they want her dead. Damien met her eyes over Seraphina's head. Then sit. This will take time. They moved to his study, untouched by the violence. Graves brought brandy. Ivy drank. Damien didn't. Seraphina curled in an armchair, exhausted. Vampires are dying, Damien began. We don't reproduce easily. Most of us are made, not born, and the old laws forbid creating new vampires without the council's permission. Our numbers dwindle each century. But Seraphina was born. To a human woman I loved 3 centuries ago, his voice was soft with old pain. She died in childbirth, but Seraphina survived. The first natural-born vampire in a millennium. Half human, able to walk in daylight, to eat food, to exist in both worlds. And that makes her a target. A threat, Damien corrected. If vampires can breed with humans, create children who don't burn in sunlight, who can pass undetected, the hunters fear an army they cannot identify. And my own kind fear dilution of pure bloodlines, his jaw tightened. Both sides want her dead. I've spent 17 years keeping her hidden, moving from place to place, always watching. Ivy looked at Seraphina, understanding now why the girl was so shy, so frightened of being seen. She'd spent her entire life as a target. That night at the diner, Ivy said slowly, Marcus wasn't just being cruel. He was a scout for the hunters, Damien finished, testing her, watching for any sign of her nature. When you stepped in, you disrupted his assessment. You saved her not just from his hand, but from being identified. The weight of it hit Ivy like a wave. She'd stumbled into a war without knowing it existed. So now what? She asked. They know where you are. They'll come back. They will. Damien stood, moving to the window. Dawn was breaking. pink light touching the horizon. He stayed carefully in the shadows. But tonight, they learned a lesson. The vampire king still has fangs. He turned to face her. The question is, will you stay? Now that you know the truth? The danger? Ivy looked at Serafina, half asleep in the chair, just a scared teenage girl who deserved a chance at life. She thought about courage, about standing between harm and the innocent. She'd done it once in a diner. Why stop now? I'll stay, Ivy said. But I want to learn to fight. If I'm going to protect her, I need to be more than a human shield. Damien's smile was fierce and approving. Then we begin tomorrow night. Welcome to the war, Ivy Martinez. Outside, the sun rose on a new day. And in the shadows of Valen Manor, an unlikely alliance was forged in blood and trust. The training was brutal. Graves drilled Ivy in hand-to-hand combat every evening while Damien taught her about vampire weaknesses, silver, holy relics, sunlight, decapitation. She learned to move quietly, to spot surveillance, to think 3 steps ahead. But 2 weeks after the attack, everything changed. Ivy woke gasping at 3 a.m., her sheets soaked with sweat. The dream had felt so real, armor weighing on her shoulders, a sword in her hand, fire consuming a castle while she screamed a name she couldn't remember. She'd had the same dream 3 nights running now, each time more vivid, more real. Can't sleep? She found Damien in the library, surrounded by ancient books, his reading glasses perched on his nose. The sight was so unexpectedly normal it made her smile despite her exhaustion. Bad dreams, she said, settling into the chair across from him. He looked up, and something flickered in his eyes. What kind of dreams?
Fire.
I'm wearing armor. Fighting alongside, she trailed off, feeling foolish. It's nothing. Just stress. Damien set down his book carefully. Too carefully. Describe the armor. What? Describe it. Please. Ivy closed her eyes, pulling up the image. Silver plate with gold trim. A crest on the chest, a raven and a rose intertwined. And a sword with words engraved on the blade, but I can never read them before I wake up. The book in Damien's hands fell to the floor. Come with me, his voice was strange, hollow. There's something you need to see. He led her through corridors she'd never explored, down to a wing of the manor that felt older than the rest. The air here was colder, thick with centuries of silence. He stopped before a door covered in preservation cloth. I haven't opened this room in 200 years, he said quietly. I couldn't bear it. Inside was a portrait gallery. Dozens of paintings lined the walls. Nobles in period dress, warriors in battle armor, women in elaborate gowns. But Damien walked past them all to the largest painting, covered with a white sheet. Before I show you this, he said, hand on the sheet, I need you to understand something. I don't believe in coincidence. Not anymore. Not after living as long as I have. He pulled the sheet away. Ivy's knees buckled. The woman in the portrait could have been her twin. Same dark hair, same olive skin, same determined set to her jaw. But she wore armor, silver plate with gold trim, a raven and rose crest on her chest. A sword rested in her hands, and Ivy could just make out engraved words on the blade. Fidelis ad mortem, Damien said softly. Faithful unto death. Who? Ivy couldn't breathe. Who is she? Lady Isolde Ashford. Knight Captain of the Queen's Guard, sworn protector of the vampire royal family. Damien's voice was thick with old grief. She died in 1623, defending Queen Morgana from a hunter's ambush. She was 27 years old. Ivy stared at her own face, painted centuries ago. This is impossible. Is it? Damien moved to another painting. A younger man who could have been him, standing beside the woman in armor. Your bloodline, Ivy. The Ashford line was bound to mine through ancient magic. Blood oaths that transcended death. Every generation produced a guardian for the vampire crown. They called it the Covenant of Shadows. But I'm not. My last name is Martinez. I'm not. Your mother's maiden name, Damien interrupted. What was it? Ivy's mouth went dry. Ashford. Sarah Ashford. The room spun. She reached for the wall, trying to anchor herself to reality. You're saying I'm
What?
reincarnated? That's insane. Is it more insane than vampires existing? Damien asked gently. Then you walking into my life at the exact moment my daughter needed protection? Then you instinctively putting yourself in harm's way for someone you barely knew? He stepped closer. The bloodline doesn't lie, Ivy. It calls to itself across lifetimes. Isolde swore an oath to protect the royal family. That oath lives in your blood. I don't remember any of this. I don't. The dreams will intensify, he said. As you spend more time here, as the magic recognizes what you are, the memories will surface. Not all at once, but enough. That night, Ivy dreamed in color. She was Isolde, younger, standing in a throne room before a vampire queen with Damien's eyes. She was taking an oath, slicing her palm and pressing it to a chalice of ancient silver. The queen's voice echoed through time, your blood to ours, your life to ours, until death and beyond. Then fire. A castle burning. Hunters pouring through breached walls. Isolde fighting desperately, surrounded, protecting a door behind which the queen and her infant son hid. A crossbow bolt to the chest.
Pain.
So much pain. And Damien's younger face above her, blood tears streaming down his cheeks. Don't leave us. Please, Isolde. Don't leave me. Her hand reaching for his face. Find me. Again. Promise. I promise. I swear it. I'll wait forever. Then, darkness. Ivy woke screaming. Serafina burst into her room, terrified. Behind her, Damien stood in the doorway, his face a mask of ancient sorrow. You remember, he said. Not a question. I died for you. Ivy's voice broke. I died for your family. And you. The memories crashed over her like waves. You searched for me. Century after century. Waiting for the bloodline to produce another guardian. I didn't know it would be you, Damien said softly, stepping into the room. Not until that night in the diner. When you stood between Marcus and Serafina, I saw her again. The way you moved, the set of your shoulders, the fearlessness in your eyes, his voice dropped to a whisper. I saw Isolde. Tears streamed down Ivy's face. I'm not her. I don't know how to fight like she did. I'm just a waitress who. You're exactly who she was, Damien interrupted, kneeling beside her bed. A woman who sees someone vulnerable and can't walk away. That was Isolde's greatest strength. Not her sword skills or her tactics. Her heart. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. The oath still lives in your blood, but this is your choice.
You can walk away.
I'll protect you, ensure you're safe and provided for.
No obligación.
Ivy looked down at their joined hands. She felt it now, the pull, the recognition, the sense that she'd been searching for something her whole life without knowing what. I can't leave Serafina, she whispered. Even if I wanted to. Something in me. She pressed her free hand to her chest. Something in me needs to protect her. It's not a choice. It's who I am. Damien's smile was heartbreaking. Then welcome home, Lady Isolde. We've been waiting for you. In the doorway, Serafina watched with wondering eyes as ancient magic wove together past and present, binding guardian and protected once more across the centuries. The Covenant of Shadows had awakened. And this time, Ivy would make sure the story ended differently. The weeks that followed felt like living in two timelines at once. By day, Ivy was herself, learning combat, managing the household, laughing with Serafina over breakfast. By night, Isolde's memories bled through in dreams, ballroom dances with vampire nobility, strategy sessions in war rooms, and always, Damien's face younger, but haunted with the same intensity. She didn't tell him about all the memories. Some felt too intimate, too complicated. You're getting better, Graves said during their morning session, nursing a bruised jaw where Ivy's elbow had connected. Isolde's instincts are waking up. It's weird, Ivy admitted, wrapping her hands. Like knowing how to do something I never learned. Muscle memory transcends death, apparently. He tossed her a training sword. Again, that afternoon, a car arrived. Expensive, black, with diplomatic plates. From it emerged a man who made Ivy's skin crawl instantly. He was tall, silver-haired, dressed in an immaculate gray suit. His smile was politician perfect, but his eyes were dead. Ancient.
Wrong.
Marcellus, Damien greeted him coolly in the foyer. I wasn't expecting you. My dear king, Marcellus's voice was oil-smooth. Surely the royal advisor doesn't need an appointment. Ivy watched from the stairs as they moved to Damien's study. Something about Marcellus set her teeth on edge. A memory flickered. Isolde standing guard while this same man argued with the old queen. His voice honeyed poison even then. He was ambitious. Dangerous. Why is he still? Miss Martinez, Marcellus had spotted her. His smile widened. How fascinating. I heard rumors Damien had acquired new staff, but I didn't expect. His eyes traveled over her face with disturbing recognition. How very interesting. Just the housekeeper, Ivy said flatly. Indeed, his smile never wavered. Just the housekeeper. The meeting lasted 2 hours. When Marcellus finally left, Damien looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. That man is poison, Ivy said, bringing him tea he wouldn't drink. That man is the head of the Vampire Council, Damien corrected. And one of the few of my kind old enough to remember the old ways. I need his support to maintain peace between our factions. Isolde didn't trust him. Damien's eyes snapped to hers. What do you remember? Not much.
Just.
A feeling. He wanted something. Power, maybe. And he was willing to wait centuries to get it. He's waited long enough. Damien stood, pacing to the window. The council meets in 3 days to discuss Serafina. Some want to legitimize her, recognize her as heir to my line. Others want her destroyed as an abomination. And Marcellus says he supports her. But Marcellus always says what you want to hear. Damien's jaw tightened. I have no choice but to attend.
Present my case.
Serafina's entire future depends on this vote. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. The council needs to see she is protectors, Ivy interrupted. That humans and vampires can coexist. That's the whole point, isn't it? If they only see her as a vampire problem, she'll never be safe. Damien studied her for a long moment. You sound like her. Maybe I am her, Ivy said softly. At least the parts that matter. The night of the council meeting, Ivy dressed in black, grave suggestion, and rode in silence to an estate even grander than Damien's. Vampires in formal dress filled an underground chamber that looked like it belonged in a medieval castle. And there, at the head of the table, sat Marcellus, acting as mediator. The trial was brutal. Council members argued about bloodline purity, about the danger of half-breeds, about Serafina's very right to exist. Damien defended his daughter with icy precision, but Ivy saw the trap closing. A vote then, Marcellus announced. All in favor of legitimizing the girl? 3 hands rose. Out of 12. All opposed. 7 hands. The council has spoken. Marcellus's smile was triumphant. The half-breed Serafina Valen is deemed a threat to vampire society. She is to be eliminated within the week.
No.
Damien surged to his feet. You can't. I can't. Marcellus's mask dropped. You forget yourself, Damien. You may be a king, but the council's word is law. Your precious daughter is a mistake. A contamination of pure blood that threatens everything our kind is built. This was decided before we arrived, Ivy said, her voice cutting through the chamber. You never intended to give her a chance. Marcellus turned those dead eyes on her. And you are? Her guardian. Her protector. Ivy stepped forward, and Isolde's memory surged, of standing in this very chamber centuries ago, of facing down these same immortal faces. The Ashford line has served the vampire crown for 1,000 years. I invoke that right now. Shocked silence. Impossible, someone whispered. The Ashford line ended. It endured, Ivy said. And I'm invoking the ancient law. Trial by combat. My life against any champion you name for Seraphina's legitimacy. Ivy, no. Damien started. Accepted, Marcellus said quickly. Too quickly. Though I'm afraid the champion will be formidable. He snapped his fingers. A door opened. The creature that entered was barely humanoid. Ancient, twisted, more monster than vampire. A revenant, Isolde's memories supplied. The council's executioner. You have 1 hour to prepare, Marcellus said, his smile vicious. Do you try to make it entertaining? As they were escorted to a preparation room, Damien grabbed Ivy's arm. What were you thinking? That thing has killed hundreds. I was thinking about Seraphina, Ivy said. And that I'd rather die fighting than watch them murder a child. You'll do both at this rate. Maybe, Ivy met his eyes. But Isolde died protecting your family once before. I guess some things don't change. Damien's expression cracked. I didn't search for you across centuries just to lose you again. Then help me win. They had 45 minutes to plan. It wasn't enough. But as Ivy stepped into the arena, a stone circle surrounded by bloodthirsty vampires, she felt Isolde's memories crystallize into something solid. Muscle memory.
Kobasta.
A warrior's calm. The revenant charged. And Ivy danced. She was outmatched in strength, in speed, in every physical way. But Isolde had fought creatures like this before. She knew their patterns, their arrogance, their predictability. Silver blade, borrowed from graves, flashed in candlelight. The revenant roared as she opened its side. It backhanded her into a wall. Ribs cracked. Ivy tasted blood. Get up, Isolde's voice whispered in her mind.
Get up and fight. She did.
The battle lasted 17 minutes. Felt like hours. When it ended, Ivy stood over the revenant's dissolving corpse, holy water burning through its chest where she'd shattered the vial against its heart. Silence. Then slowly, grudging applause. The law is satisfied, Damien announced coldly. Seraphina is legitimized. Any who challenge this will answer to me personally. But as they left, Ivy caught Marcellus's expression. He wasn't angry.
He was pleased.
It's not over, she whispered to Damien. No, he agreed grimly. It's just beginning. That night, Graves discovered the truth. Marcellus had been feeding information to the hunters for months. The attack on the manor. The council vote designed to fail. The trial by combat. All of it orchestrated to prove one thing. The vampire king had a weakness. And her name was Ivy Martinez. 3 hours later, 30 hunters breached the manor's walls. And this time, they came for everyone. The attack came at dawn, the one time vampires were weakest. Ivy woke to explosions. The manor's eastern wall collapsed in a shower of stone and flame. Sunlight poured through the breach like liquid fire, and she heard vampires screaming as they fled deeper into the shadows. Seraphina. Ivy bolted from her room, racing through smoke-filled corridors. She found the girl in her bedroom, surrounded by 3 hunters. One held a silver blade to her throat. Seraphina's eyes were wide with terror, blood trickling from her temple. Let her go, Ivy said, raising her borrowed sword. She'd taken to keeping it close after the council trial. The guardian, the lead hunter, sneered. He was massive, scarred, with eyes full of righteous hatred. Marcellus said you'd come. Said you'd sacrifice yourself for the abomination. He was right. Ivy shifted her stance, Isolde's training taking over. Last chance. Release her. The hunter laughed and pressed the blade deeper. Seraphina whimpered. Ivy moved. The fight was vicious and close. She killed one hunter with a thrust through the ribs, disarmed another. But the leader was skilled, brutal, and he was herding her toward the window, toward the sunlight streaming through the broken glass. Your kind always bleeds so red, he taunted. I'm human, you idiot, Ivy gasped, blocking another strike. Not for long. Marcellus says once you turn, you'll be leverage. The king's weakness personified. The words clicked into place. This wasn't just about killing Seraphina. It was about capturing Ivy, breaking Damien. Marcellus's plan. The hunter lunged. Ivy sidestepped, but her foot caught on debris.
She fell.
The blade descended toward her heart. A shadow erupted from the hallway. Damien, his flesh smoking in the sunlight that touched the room's edges, caught the hunter by the throat and crushed his windpipe with one hand. He moved like death incarnate, throwing the body aside, his eyes blazing crimson with fury and fear. Ivy. He reached for her, but movement from the corner stopped him. The second hunter, the one she disarmed, had grabbed Seraphina. He held a crossbow loaded with a wooden stake to her chest. Move and the girl dies. Damien froze. Father, Seraphina whispered, tears streaming. The hunter smiled. Marcellus sends his regards. He'll be claiming your throne within the hour. The council's already turned. You're finished, Solomon. He never saw Ivy's blade. She'd rolled, grabbed her fallen sword, and thrown it in one fluid motion. Pure Isolde, pure muscle memory. The blade took him through the throat. But as he fell, his fingers spasmed on the trigger. The bolt flew. Ivy threw herself in front of Seraphina. The wooden stake, meant for a half-vampire's heart, punched through her chest instead. Human flesh. Human bone. Mortal damage. She collapsed, blood spreading across her shirt in a crimson bloom.
No.
Damien was there instantly, cradling her. No, 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 Ivy, stay with me. Seraphina, Ivy's voice was fading. Safe. I'm here, the girl dropped beside them, sobbing.
I'm okay.
Please don't. Good, Ivy smiled, blood on her teeth. That's good. Her vision was tunneling. She could hear fighting throughout the manor, Graves and the staff battling hunters, the sound of Marcellus's voice shouting orders. But it felt distant, unimportant. Damien's face filled her world. Those pale eyes, now bright with blood tears. Don't leave me again, he whispered. Please, Isolde. Not again.
Not.
Isolde, Ivy breathed. Just me. You are her. You've always been her. Through every lifetime, every century, I've been waiting for you, his voice cracked. Let me save you.
Please.
Let me turn you. Monster, Ivy wheezed. You'll be alive. You'll be with us, Damien pressed his forehead to hers. I can't lose you again. I can't survive another 300 years searching. Please. Ivy looked past him to Seraphina, this girl she'd known barely a month, but would die 1,000 times to protect. The same way Isolde had died for Damien's family. The same way the bloodline always had. Some oaths really did transcend death. Do it, she whispered. But promise. Promise you'll stop Marcellus. Protect her. I swear it, Damien bit his own wrist, blood welling dark and ancient. This will hurt. And when you wake, everything will be different. But you'll be ours. Finally, completely ours. He pressed his wrist to her lips. The blood burned like acid and ice. Ivy convulsed, her body rejecting and accepting simultaneously. Pain tore through every nerve as human cells died, and something else, something older, took their place. She heard Damien's voice like a lifeline. Come back to me. Come back. Then darkness. When Ivy woke, the world had changed. Colors were sharper. Sounds were crystalline. She could hear hearts beating 3 rooms away, smell the fierce sweat of fleeing hunters, taste the dawn in the air. And the memories, not just Isolde's now, but others. A seamstress in 1702. A merchant's daughter in 1456. A Celtic warrior in 891. The bloodlines stretching back through time, each life lived in service to the vampire crown. She was all of them. And herself. Ivy. Damien's voice was tentative, fearful. She opened her eyes and knew without looking that they glowed crimson. She sat up. The stake wound was gone, her chest smooth and unmarred. "My king," she said, and the words felt right. Ancient and new at once. "I remember. Everything. Every life. Every death. Every time I found you again." Tears, blood tears, streaked Damien's face. "Isolde." "Ivy," she corrected gently, taking his face in her hands. "I'm Ivy Martinez, who served coffee and protected strangers. But I'm also Isolde, who loved your family across centuries," she smiled, fangs sharp and strange. "I'm both. I'm whole." Serafina threw herself at Ivy, sobbing with relief. Around them, the sounds of battle had faded. Graves appeared in the doorway, his face grim with satisfaction. "Marcellus is dead. He tried to run when the tide turned. Didn't get far." "The council?" Damien asked, still holding Ivy's hand.
Scattered.
"Those who survive know better than to challenge you now." "Not with the Ashford Guardian returned," Graves smiled slightly. "The legends say the king with his sworn guardian is unstoppable." Looks like they were right. Ivy stood, testing her new body. Strong. Fast. Immortal. "There are still hunters in the manor," she said, her voice carrying new authority. Damien rose beside her, their hands still linked. "Then, let's end this. Together." They moved through the manor like a storm. Damien's raw power combined with Ivy's tactical brilliance, Isolde's centuries of combat experience merged with Ivy's adaptable modern thinking. The hunters who'd come to destroy them fled into the dawn. By the time the sun fully rose, Valen Manor stood victorious. And in the ruins of the Eastern Wing, surrounded by her family, Ivy finally understood. She hadn't been brought here by chance. The bloodline had called to itself across time, pulling guardian and protected together once more. Some promises, it seemed, really were eternal. 3 months later, Ivy stood at the edge of the manor's garden, watching the sun crest the horizon. It should have killed her. Every vampire instinct screamed to retreat into shadow. But Damien's blood mixed with her Ashford lineage had created something unexpected, something new. She could walk in daylight. Not without discomfort. Her skin prickled, her eyes watered. But she endured. And more importantly, when Damien stood behind her, his hand in hers, he could endure too. "It's beautiful," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Idifur within." "How long?" Ivy asked, squeezing his fingers. 437 years since I've seen a sunrise," he pulled her closer, sheltering in the shadow her body cast. "The hybrid blood in your veins, it creates a buffer. A protection. A bridge," Ivy said, "between your world and theirs." "Our world now," Damien corrected. He turned her to face him, and in the golden morning light, he looked younger, less haunted. "You've given me something I thought lost forever. Hope." The kiss was soft, inevitable. They'd danced around it for weeks, the tension of past lives mixing with present attraction. But this moment, bathed in impossible sunlight, felt right. When they broke apart, Serafina was watching from the doorway, grinning. "Finally. I was wondering when you two would stop being so dramatic about it." Ivy laughed. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough." Serafina bounded down the steps, now moving with confidence Ivy hadn't seen when they'd first met. The council's legitimization had changed her, given her permission to exist without apology. "Are you coming? The morning crowd will be arriving soon." "We're coming," Ivy said. They drove into town together, the three of them in Damien's car, like a strange little family. The destination was familiar, Betty's diner. Except it wasn't Betty's anymore. The sign now read, Haven, and through the windows, Ivy could see humans and vampires sharing tables, eating breakfast side by side. It had been Serafina's idea to buy out the diner, renovate it, and create a neutral space where both communities could mingle safely. Stan still cooked. Graves had trained a security team, mixed human and vampire, to ensure no violence erupted. and Serafina managed the whole operation with surprising skill. "My daughter, the restaurateur," Damien said with pride as they entered. Marcus was gone. He'd left town the day after the attack, smart enough to know he'd crossed the wrong people. But his absence had created space for something better. "Ivy," Stan called from the kitchen. "The usual?" "Please." She slid into a booth, Damien beside her. It felt surreal, sitting where she'd once served coffee, now as something entirely different. A young human waitress, nervous but determined, brought their order. Coffee for Ivy, blood tea for Damien. A special blend Helena had created, making vampire dietary needs palatable to human eyes. "You've changed everything," Damien said quietly, watching the mixed crowd. "In 3 months, you've accomplished what I couldn't in centuries." "I didn't do it alone." Ivy nodded toward Serafina, who was chatting animatedly with a table of young vampires. "She's the real bridge. We're just making space for her to exist." "The council is calling for a formal audience," Damien said. "They want to meet you, the vampire who walks in sunlight." The guardian returned. "Let them call." Ivy sipped her coffee. She could still enjoy human food, another unexpected benefit. "We'll go when we're ready." A commotion at the door drew their attention. A family, clearly vampires by their pallor and old-fashioned formal dress, hesitated at the threshold. The father held a young child, maybe 6 years old. Serafina approached them with a warm smile. "Welcome to Haven. First time?" The father nodded. We heard this was a safe place. For families like ours." "It is," Serafina gestured to an empty booth. "Everyone's welcome here."
No judgment.
"No fear." Ivy watched the family settle in, saw the tension leave the father's shoulders as other vampires nodded greetings, as human patrons simply continued their meals without panic.
This
was what she died for. What Isolde had fought for across lifetimes. Not conquest. Not dominance. Coexistence. "I need to tell you something," Damien said, pulling her attention back. From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. Ivy's breath caught. "In my time, we did this differently," he said, opening the box to reveal 2 rings, ancient silver bands engraved with the raven and rose crest. "These belonged to my parents, the king and his sworn guardian. They were partners in every sense, ruling together, fighting together, living together." He took one ring out, holding it up to the morning light streaming through the window. "I know it's fast by modern standards, but we've had lifetimes, Ivy. Literal lifetimes of finding each other, losing each other, searching again." His pale eyes met hers, vulnerable in a way the ancient vampire king rarely allowed. "I don't want to waste another moment of this one. Will you stand beside me? Not as my employee or my guardian, but as my equal, my partner." Ivy's vision blurred with blood tears.
Yes.
God, yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if made for her hand across centuries. She took the second ring, sliding it onto his. "Lady Isolde Valen," Damien said softly. "My queen in all but name." "Ivy Valen," she corrected with a smile. "Your partner in all ways." Serafina squealed from across the diner, causing every head to turn. "They're engaged. My father and Ivy are engaged." The diner erupted in applause, vampires and humans celebrating together. Stan rang the order bell repeatedly. Graves, standing guard by the door, allowed himself a rare smile. As the chaos of congratulations swirled around them, Ivy leaned into Damien's embrace and looked around Haven. At Serafina, beaming with joy. At species that had been enemies for millennia sharing coffee and conversation. At the sunrise painting everything gold through the windows. "Tell me," she whispered to Damien, "in all your centuries, did you ever imagine this?" "No," he admitted, kissing her temple. "I imagined survival. Isolation. Endless waiting." He pulled back to look at her. "But you taught me that some stories don't have to end in tragedy. Some promises lead to dawn instead of darkness." Months later, The legend spread through both human and vampire communities. The story of a waitress who defended a stranger in a diner, only to discover she was bound by ancient magic to protect the vampire royal family, who died and been reborn, who defeated conspirators and bridged two worlds. But in Haven, where that waitress poured coffee and laughed with her family, Ivy knew the truth. She hadn't changed because of magic or destiny or bloodline oaths. She'd changed because she'd chosen courage over fear, compassion over convenience, connection over isolation. And in doing so, she'd proven something powerful, that the bravest thing anyone could do, human or vampire, mortal or immortal, was to stand up for someone who needed protecting. The rest? The romance, the adventure, the immortality. Those were just the rewards for being exactly who she'd always been. Ivy Martinez, Isolde Ashford,
Guardian.
protector,
Partner.
and above all, someone who'd seen a frightened girl being hurt and decided that wasn't acceptable. Sometimes that's all it took to change the world. One act of kindness in a roadside diner on a rainy night. Everything else was just the story catching up.
The end.